So, I'm here with Dan Silver, board member at the Chelsea Supporters Trust. Dan, it's been 1 year from when we first spoke and 1 year on from when Chelsea Football Club was sold to Todd Boehly. I think it's fair to say a lot has happened in that time. How are you feeling about the last year?
It's a year I like to forget. It's 10 months of my life. I'm not going to get back. Probably the worst season I've seen in, probably since the late 80s when I started, really started getting seriously when we got relegated in the playoffs against Middlesbrough, because that was a bad season. So yeah, bad season by long term, and in the more recent history, a dreadful season, because obviously, really since sort of 97, leading up to Bramwich and Bramwich onwards, we've been, absolutely bar one or two freak seasons, we've been always challenging, and this year we were just horrific from start to finish. I think anything that could have gone wrong did go wrong, on the pitch in terms of changing managers, players, the whole lot. It was just diabolical.
Obviously, as you say, the change in management has been a huge point of discussion. We actually spoke when Thomas Tuchel was dismissed, and at the time you weren't too disappointed with the decision.
I think Tuchel was getting remembered for winning the Champions League, but the second half of the previous season, obviously sanctions came in. He was managing a very difficult situation because nobody knew what was going on. The football was soporific, and it was a case of we just limped over the line. And we got to 2 domestic cup finals and lost on penalties to what was a very good Liverpool team. So it wasn't the worst season. We qualified for Champions League. But then we just started the season really bad, and we lost heavily to Leeds, Southampton. It didn't start well. I think there's a lot of stuff going behind the scenes. I think, for Tuchel to take on what he did, and the fact he was front and centre the whole way through the sanctions, and he kept putting his head above the parapet, and nobody at the club were getting involved. It was always, leave it to Thomas. And he's always said he wants to coach. He doesn't want to be more than a coach. So, yeah, it was sad to see him go, because he was an elite manager. Obviously hindsight's a wonderful thing. Maybe had they kept him till November, possibly, then made a change, it might have been different. If it wasn't for his points, we could well have been relegated, which is, because he got us a few points, and I think it was those 10, 11 points he got us, which meant we were safe. And obviously, I remember I was quite infused by Potter. I thought he's a good English manager. He's built his reputation slowly but surely. And I really thought he'd be a good manager. He started off like a house on fire. AC Milan, 2 wins, did really, really well. And then it just went absolutely, completely awful.
And why don't you think it worked with Graham Potter? Obviously, most fans seemed excited by the appointment, a young English manager who had done a great job at Brighton. Were the expectations too high? Too many players brought in?
Well, initially, the too many players argument didn't work, because that didn't happen until January. And by, post World Cup, we'd already started to be a form of slightly gone off the cliff anyway. I think the thing with Potter is he's unapologetic himself. He wasn't going to change his persona, his personality, just because he's at Chelsea. I think he's always going to be a very calm, methodical, thoughtful person. He's not going to go, all shouty like a Mourinho would or a Conte would. I mean, I remember the West Ham away game when Souček handled the ball and probably, in my eyes, slightly cast iron penalty in the last minute, which could have won us the game. And, Mourinho or Conte or whatever would have gone absolutely ballistic. But he just, what? Rest made his mind up. So he didn't change himself, which I respect him for. He wasn't suddenly going to become, angry Graham from calm Graham. I think maybe it was too much of a big job for him. I don't think he's particularly a shouty manager, much more kind of like nurturing and inspiring, rather than being one of those kind of, kick him in the arse kind of things. And then obviously all the players coming in, then kept changing the team, kept changing formation. A lot of, Chilwell injured for a while, James injured, Kante injured. The thing is, we never got smashed last year. It was always like, the odd goal defeat, apart from maybe Man United. I think that was the only team. City in the league? Oh no, City League only 1-0. But no, we never got absolutely hammered. We just very didn't score enough goals, didn't do enough to put the game to bed. A lot of late goals to drop points and so on and so forth. And really crappy defeats like Southampton at home was bad. The Villa home game, which is the final nail in his coffin, was bad. We just lacked cohesion. We lacked, there's thing that through Potter's tenure, there was no progress whatsoever. We couldn't see any tangible signs of progress. That's probably why they got rid of him, because at least if you can see there's a bit of progress, great. But no, nothing happened. I think all the players parachuted in didn't help him. But then he strange formations. You've got a centre back on the bench, and you're playing a right back at right centre back. It's like, well, what are you doing? So I don't think he helps himself. I think maybe it's just too big a job for him, and it'd be interesting to see where he ends up next.
And then Lampard was appointed to the end of the season. I mean, how did you feel about that? Because it seemed like a lot of Chelsea fans were thinking a club legend is back to come and steady the ship. But obviously it didn't really turn out like that, did it?
I think Frank was a great bit of PR because, Frank Lampard coming in, the Madrid game was a free hit. If we won, great. If we lost, everyone expected to lose anyway. We're probably not going to get relegated, despite the form was under Lampard was terrific. Because Frank Lampard, all the match going fans and most of the non-match going fans love Frank, so it was a safe bet rather than giving it to like an Allardyce or something like that. It was a safe bet. He steadied the ship. I think maybe a watching brief on players. Maybe Poch was already kind of lined up, and they just kept. It was the worst kept secret in football that Poch was going to be our new manager. So maybe just a watching brief, steady the ship, take some of the heat off the board, because obviously they know they made mistakes. They know they made some massive cock ups this year. But then they've come into football club, don't really know. No, that's not fair. They know how to run a business. They don't know how to run a football club, I think, is my viewpoint. And they've built the club up from the bottom. They've Buck, Granaskaya, Czech, all the previous mainstays went in a very short space of time, and they didn't really have any structure in place, and they had to rebuild the club. And they're putting some good people in good positions, which the club needs. I think previously it was very much like a vacuum of, one or two important people report to the owner, and then the owner makes decisions. Now they're kind of trying to build a club with different people in different positions to kind of make sure that we've got some sort of cohesive, football club we can run. And to be fair, Chelsea have been miles off the pace Premier League terms since Conte won the league. I mean, I think something like well over we're like over 120 points behind the leads in the last 6 seasons. So miles. If you look at like where Chelsea finished compared to champions in the last 5-6 years, miles off the pace. Yes, we won some cups, but that's kind of papers over the cracks of some really poor recruitment under previous regime, giving players contracts that shouldn't be getting contracts, and I've still got Bubba Rum and Bakayoko at the club, which kind of like really bloody crazy. So yes, there's been a lot of crap recruitment which hasn't helped the team. We haven't really kicked. Chelsea have never kicked on. They first team to have serious money, and they started like a house on fire. But we've never really kicked on. We win the league, regress. Win the league, regress. Did it under Ancelotti. Did it under Conte. Did it when Mourinho came back for second time. So we've never really properly kicked on. There's always people who think they know better than football people. And that's why we kind of, you look at City. City's just a beautifully well-oiled machine. I know that they're state wealth, but they've come in, they had a plan in place. They got people in before Pep, to build. And look at the success. I mean, was it 5 titles? Probably going to do the treble. Consistently successful. They sell players, and they need to sell players. They bring in players. They need to bring in players, and that's they've got a great model. Albeit, possibly the 121 charges. We'll see what happens, but
As you say, the new ownership clearly has ambitions and wants Chelsea to be a success. The amount of money they spend and the players they brought in demonstrate that. But do you think it will obviously eventually come good?
I think Potter wasn't the man, obviously. We've got no European football next season. In my opinion, I think Pochettino is a great manager. He basically, when he took over Spurs were kind of where we are. They're kind of insignificant. They weren't doing anything. They were very frustrating. And he developed Harry Kane. He properly developed Harry Kane, Dele Alli. I mean, that's a great Spurs team. That was the best Spurs team in my lifetime. They were always there or thereabouts. Didn't quite have that added where we need to win the league. You could say that Poch hasn't won anything domestically, but then Conte's gone there, serial winner, 1-0. Mourinho's gone there, serial winner, 1-0. So that's a Spurs problem, not a manager's problem. So I think he'll come in. He's got some very good young players. I mean, some real talents there. I think Badiashile looks really good. For Fowler, if he stays fit, it's good. He gets a fit Reece James back. He gets a fit Ben Chilwell back. Fernandes looks a really, really good player. So I think there is the makings of a very good squad, and getting a tough manager who's true to himself, who will give them a kick up the arse they need it. And I think we'll have a much better season next season. I don't think won't be challenging. No, will we get near the European places? I think that's an absolute minimum expectation to at least get towards the top 4.